Well, good afternoon. We've got about 5 minutes before we're going to go live, but since I am once again trying to do the cooking in the rectory, so I've got a strong internet signal, I wanted to go live a couple minutes earlier in order to just make sure that I've got a good, clear line of sight and that this is going to work all right. At one point in the broadcast, I'm going to have to actually change the camera to a different angle so that I can do the napkin fold because I need a flat surface that isn't going to be either wet or hot. So thank you for joining me, and I hope that you'll use the comment section at the side in order to say a few words or to let me know what you like or don't like about this segment so that I can improve on it for other years. So just hang in there a couple of minutes and we'll soon be ready to go. I'm already finding my throat a little dry, so I think I'm going to get a glass of water and have it close at hand. I have to tell you, my wife hates these glasses, but they're my favorite because they hold lots of water. There, that should be good to have close by. As it says in the side comments, we're going to make a seafood dish today, a simple one I absolutely love because it is delicious, but certainly not difficult, even though all the names of the constituent parts sound really technical. They aren't really. They're just made with some very rich and wonderful ingredients. I guess I should get the fish out of the fridge now. I have to tell you, my good wife has to be away for dinner tonight, so I'm only cooking for one. So I've scaled back everything in the recipe in order to make it so I don't have a ton of leftovers, but still to make it a good meal. So usually when my wife isn't coming home for dinner, I tend to get lazy and not want to make much of anything. And so I'm glad that she was going to be away on a day when I was going to be pushed by this program to make myself a really good meal. We've just got maybe a minute or two before 4 o'clock when we're going to start. Once again today, a lot of the items in this recipe that needed to be prepped, I've prepped in advance because you don't need to see me chop a shallot or cut up shrimp or anything like that. I'm sure you didn't need to see shrimp being peeled. That's a fairly simple, straightforward thing to do. Well, my watch says it's 4 o'clock, and so we're going to begin. The first thing that we're going to make today is a shrimp stuffed sole fillet. And so we'll begin by making the stuffing. I've got about a half a shallot chopped up very fine. And to it, I'm going to add in about 3 tablespoons of breadcrumbs. Now, I use the 4C gluten-free breadcrumbs. They're a little more crunchy than regular breadcrumbs, but they still make a very good stuffing. We're going to just add in a tiny amount of Dijon-style mustard. It just adds a little bit of zing to the whole recipe. A couple shakes of salt and a little bit of ground black pepper. And then we'll add a splash of dry white wine and about an equal splash of olive oil. And we'll stir that all up to create a sort of paste. Then to that, we'll add 4 nice shrimp, peeled, deveined, and each one cut into about 4 pieces, so that when you get a bit of shrimp, you're going to get lots of flavor, but you're not going to get a huge mouthful of nothing but shrimp. Now, I have a lovely fillet of sole here. I'm going to spoon the stuffing into the middle of the fillet. Seems even scaling this recipe down, thinking it's just about right for one person alone. It seems I've still made a little too much. I'll try and get it all to go inside of this fillet, but it's going to be a lot. I'll set that aside. Push this all together at the center, and then wrap the fish fillet around it. And like I said, I think I've got too much, but such is life. Now I'll take a couple of toothpicks just to hold it together. And basically, we've done with creating our fish dish. But I also said I was going to make some roasted carrots. So I have already peeled and cleaned these carrots. And I'm just going to drizzle them with a bit of olive oil. Roll them around in the olive oil a bit so that we get some all over them. Once again, a little shake of salt, some ground black pepper, and we'll put the whole baking dish into the oven at 350 and allow it to bake. Now, the next thing that I said I was going to make today is a ravioli. And then for both the ravioli and the fish, we're going to make a Beurre Blanc Sauce. Now, the ravioli is not terribly challenging at all because personally, I have yet to find a recipe that allows me to make a good pasta dough. But what I have been lucky enough to find since coming here to Bolton is a little mom and pop operation down in Woodbridge that makes the best fresh gluten-free pastas, fresh every day. And the lady there makes a butternut squash stuffed ravioli that I would kill for. So I managed to get a little bit of butternut squash stuffed ravioli. We'll bring the water to a boil back here, and then I'll add in the ravioli. It doesn't take a lot of time to cook fresh ravioli, and you should only have it in the boiling water until all the raviolis float to the top. So I just need to get the water boiling, and while that's happening, I'm going to make the Beurre Blanc sauce. Now, as you prep You're going to dice another whole shallot, very nice and small. Add that into your pan. And open something on my tablet here. Oh, shallot stuck to my fingers. Okay, that's what I needed. I just don't want to get things out of order because it will affect the finished product. So I'm going to put in the finely chopped shallots and then the zest of a half a lemon, which I've already zested. Again, there's nothing terribly educational about watching me zest a lemon. Then from the same lemon, I squeezed out the juice and got about 2 teaspoons of juice. We'll add that in. Again, you need a good bit of freshly ground black pepper. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of dry white wine. Now this one is the Trias Riesling. The reason I chose a Riesling is it's my absolute favorite, and if my good wife isn't going to be home to enjoy this meal with me, I might as well enjoy one of my favorite wines. And then we also need 1 bay leaf. I love to use bay leaves, and one of the reasons I think that I've grown to love them so much is that when I get down into the Caribbean, I always buy them absolutely fresh, and so they give a better, richer flavor than the ones that you get that have been on a store shelf for God knows how long. Lost my spot here. Yes, I need a 1/4 cup of white wine vinegar as well. And then we're going to turn that on to boil and stir well as it does, because we want it to boil until pretty well, there's the spoon I'm looking for, until pretty well all of the liquids are gone. All we're using these liquids for is to give us a really good flavor base. And once it's boiling, we're going to turn it down to a simmer and just allow it to simmer away until we just have an almost paste in the bottom of our pan. And I almost forgot. I need 3 tablespoons of heavy cream added in here as well. If I hadn't reached out for my water and practically hit it, my head would have missed that stage altogether. So we're just going to keep this simmering away. Now I can need a bowl I forgot to set out. I know what I can use. It's getting close to a boil, but it's going to have to simmer for quite a while. So I'm going to turn it down considerably and just take a moment, adjust the camera angle, and teach the napkin fold that I have for you today. So what I'm going to make with you is the Bird of Paradise napkin, which the beautiful one makes for a really beautiful table. And you'll start with a standard square napkin. And the first fold is to simply fold it in half horizontally, so you have something like this. And then you'll fold it in half the other way to get something like that. Now we'll fold the bottom corner up to the top corner. And if we've done it right, we should have 5 points here at the top. Now, with it like this, we're going to, actually with it like this, I'm sorry. We're going to take the one side and fold it down the center, like that. And then we'll do exactly the same thing with the other side, so that you have something that now looks like this. Now we'll take these 2 flaps and fold them down like that. Then we'll fold the whole thing in half down the middle, so that you end up with this. Now, inside, you'll take each of the thicknesses of the napkin and pull them up. Doesn't matter if it's perfect to begin with, you can go back and adjust these plumes afterwards to get what you're after. And then, with all the pieces of the Bird of Paradise flour, you simply have to lay it out on a plate, and it will sit and give this beautiful appearance to your table. Now it looks like we've got a nice boil going over there. So I'm going to turn the camera back over to the stove. And yes, indeed, we do have a good boil going. We just want to reduce this until we've got a nice thickening of that cream sauce there. Should take about 5 minutes to reduce this. Excuse me. Really getting a beautiful smell off of this now as it reduces. I'll leave it alone again for a little while. In the way of a theological reflection today, I was thinking about all the readings from the Old Testament that we have in this week and leading up to Holy Week. And in those readings, we find ourselves coming across a lot of biblical laments. And sometimes we can attach a fairly negative thought to that idea of lament, as though lament is about somehow us feeling bad about ourselves. But as was said in our Bible study this morning, laments are really about laying our hearts bare before God, about coming into God's presence and speaking really honestly about how we're feeling. In so many of the biblical laments, the person talks about feeling lost, feeling in trouble, feeling alone, feeling cut off from their neighbors and from their community. But in the end, all laments come down to one of the most important aspects of all. Almost always a statement like, "But my life is in your hand, O God. I will trust in you." I think that in our time, we seem to really understand the biblical laments, perhaps better than we know. We live, as the old Chinese proverb would say, in interesting times. We have struggled for 2 years with COVID and with being cut off and isolated from our neighbors. We worry and fret, or at least I speak for myself here, over the troubles going on in Russia and the Ukraine. We live in times that can be very, very frightening. But our lives are in God's hands, and we trust in God. In the psalm we had this morning, it brought it back to, you are the God of who made heaven and earth, and the God who can make all of creation. We can trust with our lives. And so as we move further into Lent, as we move into its last week before we begin to walk the way of sorrows with Jesus, we are reminded to take some time to lament. Take some time to lay before God just exactly how we're feeling, the hurts, the worries, the troubles of our lives, but to ultimately say, but my life is in your hand, O God. I trust in you. I've almost got what I'm looking for here. I think maybe a minute or two more of simmering, and we'll be ready to move on to the last stage of this Beurre Blanc sauce. My water is boiling, but I don't want to put in the ravioli until it's getting very close to being ready here with the sauce. And the fish has got a good while yet to cook as well. So I likely won't be able to show you the finished plate this week because I don't want to keep you online for an hour while that fish finishes. Or more likely, the fish will be finished and the carrots will still need more time. Right now, we're just simmering it down, and the hope is to get all the flavor we can from that lemon zest and from the bay leaf and this shallot into that heavy cream sauce that we're trying to create. It's not quite thickened enough for me to move on. I want to turn this down though. Perhaps need to turn it up a little more if I'm going to get it thickened as much as I'd like to. I'm going to need my strainer here. Ah, yes, turned up like that, it's coming along a lot faster. Not seeing the pen I'd like to find, but I guess I'm just going to have to be a little creative. I think that is thick enough now that we've created the flavor base that we want. And so I am going to use the strainer here to remove the solids while getting that lovely couple tablespoons of infused cream. Then I want to take my original saucepan and just add perhaps a cup and a half of water and bring that to a boil. Basically, we're just creating an improvised double boiler because I can't seem to find the top half of my double boiler. And the last main ingredient is 10 tablespoons of butter. And the reason I brought it out at the very last minute is you want to keep that butter in the freezer until you're absolutely ready to use it. So about a cup and a quarter of butter, and you want to cut it into about 1 tablespoon chunks. Once we get this, I don't know why I turned that off. I'm getting pretty empty-headed, I tell you. And the next part of this recipe, as we make the Beurre Blanc Sauce, requires a certain amount of patience. If you rush it, you aren't going to be as happy with your end results. So be patient. Once this comes to a boil, we're going to turn it down to about medium high so that it stays at a boil but not a big rolling boil. Seems to be just about there. But again, be patient, bring it to a full boil because the end product will be better as a result. There, we're just where I'd like it to be, so I'm going to turn it down to medium high. We're going to take that little bit of sauce that you've made so far and get it into the heat, but don't let it touch the bottom of the pan where it would be coming in contact with the direct heat from the element. And then, one at a time, we'll add our pieces of butter and stir each one until it is completely melted. Don't rush because you'll bring down the temperature of your sauce overall, and that will not be good for the end result. When the first block of butter has completely melted, then you're just going to add the next one and carry on doing what you've been doing. I'm sure that any one of us can imagine just what a beautiful, rich sauce this creates, being pretty well a butter sauce. And I've told you before, I really believe that there are very few things that aren't seriously improved by the addition of butter. Butter and bacon are two of my favorite ingredients to find their way into any dish. As you move along, of course, each tablespoon of butter is going to melt a little faster because it's down in a deeper amount of liquid. we've got our first one melted. We'll add a new one and continue the process of slowly melting each one. Already those original smells of shallots and vinegar and wine and bay leaves, and certainly that smell of warm butter, they're all mingling together into a wonderful, wonderful smell. And I know that over that beautiful piece of fish and over these wonderful butternut squash raviolis, it is going to make a phenomenal meal. Our second tablespoon of butter is almost melted now as well. So here we go. We'll add the next block of butter. Continue this process of stirring. I don't think it's likely very efficacious for you to watch me melt all 10 of them or to see me boil raviolis. I'm going to toss them into that hot water that I have over there and leave them in the water until every one of them has come up and floated. That's a sign with fresh raviolis that they are absolutely ready to serve. And then you simply spoon the beurre blanc over both that beautiful piece of fish and over the raviolis, with the carrots served on the side. The reason I chose to work with a fillet of sole today is that sole is such a lovely, mild fish that it doesn't overpower the very simple flavors of this Beurre Blanc sauce. And so that is the reason that I chose to go with sole as opposed to some of the other fish that might be available on the market. Perhaps some of the more expensive fish that might be on the market. At any rate, God bless. Thank you for joining me today. And I will be certain to take a picture of the finished plate and to post it at the beginning of next week's presentation. Next week, as our last week in this gathering, as I promised, this is going to be a silent auction, and I invite friends, neighbors, parishioners, whoever might be watching, put in a vote or a bid on buying the finished product of the cooking time. And that finished product, I believe, is going to be a braised lamb shank with fingerling potatoes, one of my favorite meals. It's something I usually have to have out because my wife doesn't really enjoy lamb. I always think she doesn't know what she's missing out on. Anyways, God bless and thanks for joining me.